All right. Well, hey, good afternoon. Good to see you guys. If you're in person, if you're watching online, thanks for being with us. We've actually never done a Good Friday service like this before, and so I'm excited about it and kind of see what happens. If you're watching at work right now and your boss catches you, just say it's about Jesus. They can't really argue with that, but I'm thankful for today. I think any of us with faith in Christ can all agree with that, right? Like, this is a day that sometimes it can feel somber, sometimes it can feel weird and all that kind of stuff, but it's a good day. It's a good Friday. And today, what we want to do is together, even with kids in the room too, is remind ourselves why this is a good day. And to kind of think about why it's a good day, I want to ask this question. What is the job that you have hated most in your life? Like a job that you felt like you had to lower yourself to do. Like it was a disgusting job or a job you just felt like you were above and didn't want to do that for yourself or somebody else. What's a job that you had to lower yourself to do? Because sometimes things that we do in life are hard. They're sometimes gross. Sometimes they're difficult. Like it's not good. What jobs, do you not like to do? Like, so my son Noah, he is 8 years old, turned 9 this summer. And as he's getting older, he can do more things. And one of the things I realized he can do now is he can take our dog outside. And I am so excited about this because it means I don't have to do it anymore. So Noah has a responsibility now that in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon, whatever, is when Bo needs to go outside, he takes him outside. And if Bo does his business in our yard, Noah then has to go pick up that business and make sure it gets disposed of properly. It's not a very fun job, right, Noah? No, it's not great, but he has to do it. Now, kids, maybe you have to do a job at home that isn't very fun that your parents have you do. Maybe you have to take out garbage or clean your room or help with dishes or whatever that may be. We have jobs that we don't like to do, and that's what happens in life. Even as adults, we deal with that. I don't know if you've ever heard of Mike Rowe, the guy who does Dirty Jobs. Ever watch that show? I think it's great, and I'm also thankful I don't have to do that. But Mike Rowe is a guy, he voluntarily goes and does dirty jobs in life, and he lowers himself to do these things. He's a very famous guy. He's wealthy. He's got it all, well and good, but he does these different jobs that aren't very fun. So like one of the jobs he had to do, he listed some of the worst jobs he's ever done. And one of the jobs was he had to be a sewer inspector, where guys, he had to go into the sewers and clean them and check them and test them, and he's dealing with people's doo-doo. It's not very fun in life. Like, this is what he had to do. Another job he had to do, which doesn't sound funny, he was a snake inspector. And what this meant is he went around with his biologist and they captured snakes to test them, to see how they're growing, to see what they're eating and things like that. He was bitten over 36 times just for this job. Like, he was on this job for like a week and he got bit over 36 times by snakes. Not fun. But this is the one that I laugh at when I never have to do it. And he said this is the most terrifying job he's ever done. It's this. He was a shark suit tester. So what this was he doesn't know if this chainmail is good to handle a shark bite. His job was to put this chainmail on, this shark suit, and get in the water with these sharks and have them bite him to see if it's good or not. Like, how many of you guys want to do that job? Like, if this suit malfunctions, you're losing an arm. Like, it's not going to go good for you, right? But this was one of the most terrifying jobs he had to do. It was not fun. Now, he never had to do these jobs, but he's done it, and obviously he got very famous with this TV show. But he did it with his goal to understand people. He wanted to understand what people went through in these different types of jobs and roles they had in life. Because honestly, we don't like the idea of lowering ourselves. We don't like the idea, like something that kids do when they have younger siblings, they like to hold their power of being the older sibling over their younger siblings. This is what happens. We do this in life. Me, the job I hated doing and still hate to this day is doing dishes. Like, I worked as a dishwasher for a couple years in my aunt's restaurant, and because of those traumatic few years of life, I hate dishes forever. Like, it brings up PTSD. It's not very good if I have to do them. Like, it's just not very fun. And so when I was old enough in my aunt's restaurant to move up to a different job, I took it right away, and I made my younger brother to be the dishwasher because I didn't want to do that anymore. We don't like it. We don't like to lower ourselves, but this is actually what Good Friday is all about. Like, if we really think about this for a moment, the idea of Good Friday is about someone, and that someone is Jesus lowering himself to save us. Because here's the deal, we were in huge trouble, and we could not save ourselves. And so the tension for Good Friday is this: how low did Jesus have to go to save us? Because something often that gets kind of lost in Good Friday is what exactly needed to take place. Now, something to recognize first is this: Jesus has always been here. Like, we think of the story of Jesus at Christmas time when he's born, and then we go throughout his life and his ministry for over 3 years, and then his life ends with Easter, death, resurrection, then, ascends back to heaven. We think of that 3.5-ish years as Jesus' life and existence. But the thing is, Jesus existed before his birth on earth. Jesus is God. And so Jesus has always been, he was before he was on earth, he existed. He's the Son of God. He's part of the Trinity in our faith. He existed before his birth, and he was in glory. He was in heaven. He was part of creating creation. So when we see things around us, you see space, you see mountains, you see trees, you see humans, Jesus was a part of creating that. This is what Paul writes in Colossians 1, verses 15 through 17. He says, "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation, for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Now, this is not just some lackadaisical verse Paul's writing here. He is writing that Jesus created everything. And everything's held together by him because this is who he is. This is the supremacy of Jesus. His greatness is unmatched. He was in his glory in heaven. But the thing is, we were broken from that relationship with God, and God longs to be with us. And so for that to happen, something had to fix that problem. And because God longs to be with us in our relationship with him now and for eternity, the result was sending Jesus. And Hebrews writes this in chapter 2, verse 9. It says, "But we do see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone." The writer of Hebrews says that Jesus for a little while was made lower than the angels, and they were referring to an Old Testament scripture that referred to humans. That when we were created to be a little lower than the angels. Like, there's a hierarchy of creation. There's, God existed for all time, but when he created things and he created angels, angels are higher than us. They're in heaven, they're glory, giving God praise and glory. We were created a little lower than them. We're not up to angel level. That's okay. But God loves us, created us, and so Jesus was made to be a little lower, just like us. And he came to this earth, he was a little lower, and this is how he started lowering himself. This is how low Jesus went. The first thing he did to lower himself was this. He lowered himself to birth. No, I want you to come up here real quick. He knows he has to do this, so we've already talked about this role, right? But Jesus lowered himself to birth. Now, this is Noah. This is my 8-year-old oldest son. You turned 9 this summer, correct? And what do you like to do in life? What's some of your favorite things to do?
Play baseball.
Play baseball? You can take that for it. You like playing baseball. Are you good at baseball? Can you throw the ball fast? Can you hit the ball with a bat? Can you run fast? You can do that well. What else do you like to do?
I like to spend time.
Spend time at school. Okay, can you do math?
Yeah.
Can you read? You're doing pretty good, right? Now, let me ask you this. 8 years ago, when you were a little baby, when I was holding you like this, like this, okay? Could you do any of that?
No.
Could you read when you were a baby?
No.
Could you play baseball when you were a baby?
No.
Could you live without the help of your mom and me?
No.
You could do nothing, right? You needed us, but now you can stand on your own, run on your own. Like, you don't even need us anymore, do you? No, okay. You don't even want me? Yeah, I know, but you're stuck with me, okay? You're stuck now. But you couldn't do anything when you were a little itty-bitty baby, right? That's what Jesus did. You can have a seat now, buddy. Let's give it up for Noah. Being the pastor's kid, he has to do stuff he doesn't like to do sometimes. Well, Jesus, who created everything, became that little baby. He became that little baby who could not survive without the help of his mom and his dad. He needed the help of the person he created. He created Mary, and now he's being taken care of by Mary. He lowered himself to birth. Now, this is what we celebrate at Christmas time, and it's wonderful. And, but Jesus went from glory in heaven to this lowly, helpless little baby. And he wasn't born in some extravagant way. Like, think about when a royal baby's born in the UK, like, it's a big deal, right? There's news coverage, like everyone's freaking out, celebrating it. It's a big deal. Even when babies are born now, it's a big deal, right? Like when our kids are born, we're putting on social media, we're calling things. It's a big deal. We send out birth announcements. We're celebrating all of this. Now, when us adults were born, like we didn't have that. We had like, Polaroids with the wait for them to develop as look at this picture in like a minute. Or we'd call collect and like, hey, what's your name? Hey, it's Brandon, my baby was born. Like that's what we'd say in the collect call. So we have to get charged for it. Like we still celebrated it. But Jesus was born in a cave. Not celebrated. Not this big announcement, except with some shepherds and some magi. Like, he was born in a cave. And then he didn't have some nice, bassinet for him to be laid in. He had a feeding trough where animals would eat food. He was this helpless baby who created this world, and now he needs the help of others just to survive. He lowered himself to birth. But here's the thing. It sounds crazy, Jesus in his glory in heaven lowering himself to birth, but yet he had to go lower than that to get to you and me. He lowered himself to be a carpenter's kid. When Jesus grew up, like there's like 30 years in between birth and Jesus starting his ministry where Jesus grew up. He became this typical Jewish kid in Nazareth. Like this is where he lived. He grew up. His stepdad, Joseph, was, we know him as a carpenter. There's maybe some thought he was actually more of a stonemason. It doesn't matter. Either way, Joseph worked with his hands, and Jesus was not selected by the rabbis and the teachers, and so Jesus grew up working with his hands as well. He had a rough job, a difficult job. He did not grow up wealthy. He probably grew up very poor. His stepfather Joseph probably passed away when he was younger because we don't see him in the gospel account, so he probably passed away. So he did not have a great life growing up, but he was loved, but he still lowered himself to be a carpenter's kid. He wasn't this religious elite, even though he was God in the flesh. And so he was born low, and then he lived low growing up, but yet Jesus still had to go lower. And he lowered himself even more in his ministry. When Jesus started his ministry to help us know God better, know about God's kingdom, he didn't have a home to stay in. He started just traveling around the area. In fact, when people wanted to follow Jesus, they would ask, where are you staying? And Jesus said, I have nowhere to stay. Like, I'm going to stay wherever. If I sleep in the wilderness tonight, that's what's going to take place. Now, the religious elite of that day, they had the nice clothes, the status, the house. But Jesus, who's the Messiah, who's God in the flesh, he lowered himself in his ministry to be a guy who didn't have a place to live, didn't have guaranteed money for food. And in fact, he lowered himself to be a guy that was often rejected by people, rejected by the elite, but he was loved by the outcasts. Again, but even that was low. Because the religious elite looked at status by being accepted by other people who were elite. But Jesus, he was loved by the outcasts. He lowered himself in his ministry. And yet, he still had to go lower for you and me. And he lowered himself with his chosen group. I mentioned he was rejected by the elite, but loved by the outcasts. The people that Jesus surrounded himself with, that he would teach and love and kind of instill the responsibility to share his good news after he was gone, were not some smart, extraordinary individuals. They were ordinary people, and sometimes even worse than that. They were fishermen. They were traitors. They were rebels. They were thieves. And some of them were women. Like, that was scandalous in that day. The fact that Jesus had women following him as part of his circle and things like that. They didn't have a place. They couldn't be following the Pharisees and the other religious leaders of the Jewish day. He lowered himself with his chosen group. It was with that chosen group that things were going to change in this world. And yet, he didn't care how bad that looked to the elite. And then he still had to go lower. And he lowered himself to be arrested and beaten. You see, Jesus came, and he came to teach us and to love us and to show us God's kingdom, but that was not the end game. The end game was always going to be, and needed to be, his death. And he knew that. Now, we're talking about someone who pulled miracle after miracle. This guy who would make the lame walk, the deaf hear, the mute talk, the ones with leprosy, they'd be healed, they'd be restored. This guy walked on water. This guy raised people from the dead. So if an army wanted to come and take him out, he easily could snap his fingers and they're gone. Like Thanos style from Endgame, I don't know. But he lowered himself to be arrested, put on an unfair trial, and beaten. Like, something we can't miss is the humility he went through before he ever got to the cross. Like, so this is something we have to recognize is that when Jesus was arrested and put on trial, it was this really messed up situation where it was really the religious leaders that wanted him dead, but they couldn't do that themselves, so they needed the Roman Empire to sign off on it. So they started lying and manipulating and doing all these things. In the process, Jesus was beaten, he was whipped, he was scorned, he was just destroyed. His body was beaten to a pulp. We're talking about God who 30-some years before that was in his glory in heaven. Now he's arrested being whipped with a cat of nine tails. A whip with 9 lashes at the end over and over across his back. Jesus lowered himself to be arrested and beaten. The Creator and King is now being beaten to a pulp for us. And yet, he still had to go lower. And he lowered himself to be killed on the cross. Jesus did nothing wrong and yet was nailed to a cross to be killed like a criminal in that day. A cross that was meant to be a torture device to show the Roman Empire, show any enemies of the Roman Empire how strong they were. And so he's taken and he had to carry his cross in a humiliating way through town. So everyone saw that this man was walking to his death while carrying his cross. He was nailed to it while he would be hanging there, and he would eventually die from that. But he didn't have to, but he chose to. Because that's how low Jesus chose to go for us. And this is what we read in Luke 23:32-46. Long verses, but follow with me. This is Luke's account of the crucifixion, where he says, 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to a place called the Skull, they crucified him there. Along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left, Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Stop right there really quick. Think about that for a moment. He's being crucified, and his words are, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." He's thinking about us. And then they divided up his cloths, casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine and vinegar and said to him, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him which read, "This is the king of the Jews," as a way to mock him. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him and said, "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. When the sun stopped shining, the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. That was it. He was God lowering himself to death for you and me. And the penalty of sin was death. And this is what led him there. The reason Jesus chose to go from glory to birth, to growing up in this humble way as a carpenter's kid, this humble ministry, the lowering himself with the people chosen to be around him, to be beaten and arrested, to be put to death on a cross. The reason he did this is because you and me and every other human being were far from God because of our sin. This is what led him there. And that sin needed to be paid for. And that penalty, that payment for sin was death. Either we pay for it or someone else does. And Jesus lowered himself as far as possible to make that payment for you and me. Jesus' whole life was him lowering himself for us. Not because he had to, but because he chose to out of love. This is what Jesus did. One of my favorite pieces of scripture ever is Philippians 2, 6-11. This is what Paul writes. He said, talking about Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. Being made in the human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Jesus knew that we would not be able to understand him as God. So he lowered himself to be human like us. And yes, he was God in the flesh, but we couldn't grasp that, so he became a servant. God, who created us, served us here on earth, being made in the human likeness, a little lower than the angels. He became obedient to death, even death on a cross. He went lower and lower and lower until he can get to where you and I were at. And this is why it's a Good Friday. Because no matter how far we are or were from God, Jesus lowered himself to the point needed to bring us back. While we push back on lowering ourselves as humans, the God of the universe lowered himself so far that he laid down his life for you and me. God became man so he could die so that you and I could live. And what I want us to get on this Good Friday as we reflect is this. Don't miss how low Jesus had to go to come get us. Don't think too highly of ourselves on Good Friday. Because if anything should remind us of how low we are in our sinful nature, it should be Good Friday. Because we see how far Jesus went to get us. To the point of death. We realize in this moment, though, that yes, we were so far from God, and God went so far to get us, but that shows us how much you and I are loved by God. That no matter what you've done, no matter what you will do, and kids, if you're listening to me right now, I want you guys to pay attention because you're going to grow up and you're going to mess up, okay? You're going to mess up in life. That's okay. Here's the deal. No matter what you do, guys, God will never stop loving you. Don't ever forget that. Adults, don't ever forget that. No matter what we've done or will do, it will never separate us from the love that God has for us. Now, what caused this is our sin. It messed it up. Don't miss this. Yeah, we get to the celebration of Easter in a couple of days, but we have to understand the weight of our sin led Jesus to do this at Good Friday. But here's the one thing that we're walking away with today, and it's this. You were never too low and out of reach for God. You were never too low and out of reach for God. No matter what you've done or what you think, no matter what your views of God are or anything like that, you were never too far away from God or too low. Because God lowered himself as far as needed to rescue and redeem every single one of us. And Good Friday, we remember that. That's what makes today a Good Friday. I mean, think about this. Think about the crucifixion for a second. He was not, the people weren't too low who were at the crucifixion. His mother was there. Jesus went as low to save his mother, who cared for him as a baby. Some of his closest friends, John, the Apostle John, was there. And Jesus lowered himself to save John. Some of the other women in the ministry, his disciples, were there at the crucifixion scene as well. And he lowered himself to save them. I always think about the people who crucified Jesus, the Roman soldiers. Even the one Roman soldier, after Jesus' death, he said, truly, this man was way beyond what we understood. And Jesus lowered himself to save the Roman soldier if he chose to accept it. He also chose to save the people who weren't at the crucifixion scene. You know where all the Jesus' other closest friends were in this moment? They ran away. All the guys ran away. Peter, James, Matthew, they were nowhere to be found in this scene. But Jesus lowered himself even to save those who ran away in his darkest time. He also lowered himself to save you. I think one of the most powerful things we could do at Good Friday is understanding that when Jesus died, he had you on his mind. Knowing that every whip and painful beating he took was for you. The nails that hung him onto that tree, that cross, was for you. That no matter where you are in life right now, and maybe you're someone who wants nothing to do with God and somehow you're watching this right now, I'm glad you are. Or maybe you're someone you've wrestled with faith or someone who you followed Jesus your whole life. It's so important that we understand on Good Friday that this is for you. No matter where you're at, Jesus lowered himself to come get you. That's a powerful thing for us to remember. And so we remember this together. And the truth is, I think for a lot of us today, we're not learning anything new. Like, I'd love to think to myself, I taught you something cool, something new today. I didn't. We've known this. That's okay. Because sometimes in our faith, what we need is not some new thing to understand, but just to remember what we've already known, is that we are loved. So much so that God lowered himself to the furthest point possible to show us how much we are loved. And we're sitting in that truth of God's love and Jesus' sacrifice today. So my encouragement is, let's remember that. Let's worship that. And here's what we're going to do. Aaron is going to play a song here in a moment. And we take communion pretty much every time we gather as a church. And we're going to do it today, but we're going to do it a little differently. Usually what we do at one church is we take it together. Like as one church, as one big body of believers, online and in person. But today, if you haven't grabbed communion, you can go grab that here in a moment. But what I want you to do today is I want you to take this moment to reflect on your own. To pray, to think, maybe sing along with the lyrics, whatever you want to do. But you choose how to reflect on the cross in this moment. And when you're ready, you take communion as a way to worship and remember what Jesus has done for you on Good Friday. You could take it during the song, you could take it at home later. I don't care when you take it. But my encouragement is I want you to take it in a moment you're reflecting on what took place on Good Friday a couple thousand years ago. And what's going to happen is after this next song, I'll come up, I'll pray, and then we'll do one more song together. But I really want to encourage us all, no matter where we're at, is to reflect and remember and worship God in this truth. Because Jesus lowered himself as far as he had to go to get you. Because you were never too low and never too far out of reach for God. And Good Friday proves that. Will you pray with me? And we'll do this song. God, thank you so much for today. God, you are good. And today is the day to remember that more than anything else, because we see how far you would go to show how much you love us. That you loved us so much that you couldn't stand the thought of us not being with you. So you sent your son, who was in his glory, to be born in a cave, to grow up a humble Jewish boy, working with his hands in a humble, not well-paying job, to start a ministry where he was often rejected by people around him, but he chose this outcast group of people who flipped the world upside down through his teaching and love. And he lowered himself to be arrested, to be beaten, and to be crucified on a cross like a criminal, even though he was not one, just so we could be with you. Thank you for that truth. Thank you for lowering yourself more than we could ever do ourselves, so we can be rescued. And we pray.